The following was recorded in front of a live studio audience at the Studio 21 Podcast Cafe. This is the United Podcast Network.
Welcome to Tell Us Why, a podcast for the financial freedom community. In business, we often get so focused on the what, we lose sight of the why. The why is the key to your success. When you know your why, then your what has more impact. Money is the result of our work, but it's our why that fuels it, that fuels you. If you're looking to succeed in your quest for financial freedom, make sure to join us every week as we, along with our guests, discuss different stories of success, how they were achieved, and how you can do the same. And of course, we ask them to tell us why. Here are your hosts, Jack and Mike.
Welcome to the Tell Us Why podcast, episode number 5. I am your host, Jack Dennerple, here alongside my co-host, Michael Ketchen.
How you doing?
Not bad.
Not bad at all.
For those watching on Facebook, don't tell the YouTube users that we had a technical difficulty.
Well, the quirky dog intro. Chrissy's been fired.
Chrissy just got fired.
Her and her dog are walking out of the studio.
Murph's taking over.
Yep.
It's cool.
But here we are. Yeah, episode 5. Like I said, it's been a great week. I know our business, my business, your business, working through the due diligence on our, again, as I mentioned last week, it's an 8-unit building that has a laundromat. I've learned more about laundromats and that business in the last few weeks. Good cash flow producing asset class.
Yeah.
And I will be sharing some details in the community, bringing that type of stuff out, because I know there's a lot of people out there who are reaching out on social media, on the Instagram, on the Facebook, on
Very
LinkedIn.
much so, yeah.
You know, how are you guys doing this? How are you underwriting this? I'm super interested. And definitely a business class that we're excited to get into, and we'll be sharing that with everyone in the community because maybe there's opportunities to grow and some stuff coming for everybody involved.
Yeah, I can't wait to get the community kicked off and running. We're really going to put a lot of hardcore effort into that.
A lot of good stuff coming up.
Yeah, a lot of great stuff.
What's going on in your business?
So a couple of things. I think we're going to touch on a couple today. I think property management, thinking about outsourcing that. Mike doesn't feel too fondly about that.
We'll debate.
Big debate, a lot of disagreement. But I got a deal that I offered on. I didn't officially offer, but was trying to have the broker double up.
Officially, unofficially?
It's an unofficial offer.
Okay.
But we'll touch on that as well.
So. I like it. Well, let's get the show on the road. But first, let's hear from today's sponsors.
Are you sick of being treated like just another number by large insurance companies? Do you want a more personalized experience with somebody that you can trust? With Keith Monty from Boynton's Insurance, that's exactly what you'll get. Keith is an experienced professional who can design an insurance plan tailored to fit your specific needs. With access to over 30 insurance carriers, Keith is able to shop numerous markets to find a price that works for you. So if you want an insurance agent that you can rely on and one that has your best interest at heart, then call or text Keith today on 978-241-2363. That's 978-241-2363. Keith Monty. He'll get you covered.
So before we get into that, I'm working with Keith right now.
Yep.
He is saving my bacon on something.
Oh, boy.
Yeah, so we're going back and forth. He just emailed me before this, and I think we have a solution. So
I love solutions.
Hero.
I love
He's my
saving
hero.
money, and I love solutions. They usually go together.
A lot of money, I think. So
all right.
Should be good.
So,
go ahead.
yeah, I was going to say, so for today's episode, we're going to be doing a deep dive on all things real estate related in today's market. And as we know, unless you're living under a rock, it is the hottest market in the history of this country.
Wait, it is?
Literally, the history. It cannot get hotter. And
so there's no deals or anything like that?
That's what we're going to decide.
Oh, okay.
Because one of those things we're going to touch on, as Jack just alluded to, is property management. And for those at home who are unaware, I self-manage. I'm an owner-operator. That's our model. Basically, doesn't mean I'm out there changing toilets. There's nothing wrong with that. But if Michael Ketchen's changing toilets, we're all in trouble. Because anyone who knows me, the running joke is these hands don't get dirty. Jack takes a little different tact, which I may or may not beat him up on. He does take property management.
Pretty sure he will.
Why don't you talk and start to, let's have this debate here on air. What is with the management, and what are you thinking with this deal and as a whole as the business?
So when I say I property manage, I don't actually property manage. Like, I have a online platform that I'm very happy with.
Okay.
If people want that name or anything like that, we can reach out in the community.
Reach out and do it. Yep.
And I can hook you up with them. So basically, they basically do everything that a property management team would do.
Probably poorly, but that's okay.
Well, that's my concern. Like, some of these things that I'm getting, like, basically they manage the maintenance. So if somebody has a leaky toilet, they'll call a plumber, send a plumber, schedule a plumber, and basically I don't have to do anything.
Okay.
My problem is I kind of enjoy the property management aspect of it. So I didn't want to give it up fully until about a week ago.
What happened a week ago?
So we spoke about it last week with the tenant who I missed an inspection.
Yep.
Like, that's just 100% negligence on my part.
Okay.
The financial impact is actually better. I'm actually better because I screwed up on that. But my problem, because it's already re-rented, I'll get into that in a minute. Somebody's moving in on Friday. Okay. But basically, like, the family, like, they wanted to move from one of my apartments to another one of my apartments. It's a little bit bigger, a lot nicer.
Yep.
And now, because of this, like, they won't be able to. So I still feel like a POS because of that.
Okay.
But going into the property management aspect of things, like, I miss doing that because I was changing a vanity. Like, I've never changed a vanity before. The entire day before that, I went there at 10 o'clock, and I think I left at 6 o'clock. Like, it should be a 20-minute job for someone that's a professional to do. Like, I thought I could handle it, but I ended up having leaky pipes that I could not get fixed. I ended up having to call in a plumber anyway the next day. They did it the next morning. But I spent my entire day dealing with that issue instead of all I had to do was send an email. So now my business is hurting because I'm essentially wasting my time doing that ticky-tack stuff that I probably shouldn't be focused on at this point in my business.
Well, let's jump in right there, because this is what we always talk about too, is what is your time worth? And I think this is something that when you take a step back, I think it's very shocking to those who aren't, entrepreneurs or in the business. But what I say, for example, all the time in my own business, I actually say my time is worth $10,000 an hour. That was the number we established. And people sit there and say, man, does that mean you're making $10,000 an hour? Well, yes and no. It doesn't mean someone's actually paying me a paycheck. But to Jack's point, what it means is the reason I'm not changing vanities, I'm not changing toilets, is that I'm going out and finding deals or finding capital. And if we do a deal, for example, like let's talk some real numbers. The one that's we just did recently in New Hampshire. We just talked about it. 16 unit. We bought it for $890. We put in, call it $400,000 just for simple math. It just appraised at $2.12 million. So that took 9 months start to finish. You made $800,000 in equity. So that's what we mean about the $10,000 an hour. When you reverse engineer the math, you're not doing that if you're changing vanities.
Yeah.
That's the positive of management. Now, if I may go, let me tell you the reason why I don't like management.
Here we go.
Is, then full disclosure, to each his own. I have a good buddy we'll have on a future episode who owns larger complexes, different model. It's very model specific. I believe he could do a better job taking his management internally. He disagrees. He thinks those asset classes are too big. You need on site, yada, yada, yada. But the debate is the way management company works on asset classes the size we usually target, the 6 to 40 unit buildings in that mid-sized multifamily. They're usually taking between 7 to 10%, and then they usually take half to the entire first month of lease up.
Yeah.
They
My
then
property's in Florida.
Yep.
It's all 1 month of rent.
1 month of rent, and then so you got to factor that in. Then they also add on whenever they respond to a maintenance call. They add on whenever they have to go to the property, quarterly inspection, things like that. So when you start backing out the numbers, we arrived at the conclusion that the management structure that most of these property managers sell, they're incentivized. Basically, they make more money when there's issues at your property, and you as the owner make more money when there's not issues at your property.
And another thing on your point, as opposed to mine.
Just because my point's better, but that's okay.
They're also incentivized to turn over every year. Like, a long-term tenant isn't good for them because, again, that 1 month of rent that they get for filling a lease up or a vacancy is
That's a substantial amount of money.
Yeah, it's more than the 10% that they get on a.
And I'll tell you right now, when things go awry, I got horror stories we can get into with the other investors. They don't give money back. At the end of the day, they're quick to point out that you're the owner. So I will say though, all that to play devil's advocate on my own model. What we're in the process of doing is essentially we've created a property management company that we're bringing on partners and we're bringing on team members to eventually offload this. Because what it really comes back to is that time freedom we're just talking about. Yeah. And there are, great companies out there. There are people who do it. We've just chosen to do it this model. But there's pros and cons to that. One of the cons that when Jack does go with a management company, he won't have to deal with that we have to deal with. We need to put systems in place that, it might be 11 p.m., it might be midnight. I might end up with a phone call. We've set up the system in such a way where a lot of things have to go wrong for that phone call to reach me. But they still do reach me. Last night was a perfect example. Actually, real life example. We got a 4 a.m. call because someone staying at one of the Airbnbs had a smoke alarm going off. Couldn't figure out to take out the batteries. That's a separate issue. But they called the fire department.
Ooh, awesome.
Well, the fire department doesn't care on who to contact. Guess who they contacted? Me, Mr. Owner. So 5 a.m., I'm on the phone with the Kennebunk Fire Department. So good times.
Yeah.
So there are definitely trade-offs, and I don't think there's a right answer. If you're someone who's thinking about getting into the game, like last week's listener question, for example, Kim, you might start with a 3-unit, and depending on where you're at in life, depending on what your job is, there's some people who really want to get in and get their hands dirty. There's other people who, for the sake of comfort, want to start with a management company so they kind of ease their anxiety. So it really is case by case. There's no right or wrong answer. As much as I give Jack a hard time, it really is case specific. And I don't think there is a right or wrong answer. You just have to know the pros and cons and really decide what you want. And also be flexible. This can change over time. Yeah. Jack's going back and forth, and I think right now you're leaning towards going back with management, correct?
I am. I mean, originally, like I said, I like doing that stuff when I can solve that stuff and it's quick and easy and it's fun to do. Not when I'm there for 7 hours and I should have been there for 45 minutes or 20 minutes or whatever. But on that note, going back to using a property management company actually was referred to me by a listener of the podcast. No joke. That's a fact.
Awesome. Love it.
But, Cheech, I'll give you a shout out. But on that note, I would like to have a team in place eventually. When I started with the local unit, it's literally 5 blocks from my house. So it felt completely unnecessary.
Convenience is a killer of efficiency.
Yeah. So at that point, I was like, oh, I can handle it. I want to learn what property managers go through so that I can better manage them in the future.
And evaluate them. Okay.
And now I'm at the point where I have more than those only 6 units. Now my workload is going to double. And is it worth my time now? So I've come to the conclusion after, I've given it a lot of thought. But I feel like, just going back to the example of that leasing up that apartment.
Yep.
I had it marketed for about 3 weeks. I don't really know what I'm doing. Matt Hitchcock, last week's guest, will probably rip me a new one. I actually spoke with him, and I still am not very good at it, obviously.
Yep.
That's why I ended up having that tenant move down to that one because I wasn't doing a great job at leasing it up.
Okay.
So I mentioned that to this property manager, and he literally had it leased up with an 820, I think is their credit score.
Wow.
I was going for Section 8 before that,
tenant.
And this is it's an old retired couple, 820 credit score. They're not going to be partying or causing a ruckus. Ruckus? What am I, 96 years old? I don't know. Causing issues. They're going to be great tenants. There is no debate about that. At this point, it could be completely
wrong. You never know, man.
True. But, he had it leased up in a day. And now, if I'm going to not use him again, am I good enough? It's now I'm going a month or 2 with a vacant unit, and that is costing me and my investors money. So I just feel like at this point, with the increase in units locally, this guy can handle all of them. For my investors' sake, for my sake, I just think it's a better investment at this point.
And I still think Jack's crazy, but that's why they call it a friendly debate. So that's, we'll revisit this in a year from now when he realizes how much money he paid
when it goes horribly wrong, we'll have another podcast about it.
We'll have a separate one. So,
but I mean, even in that regard, like just from the time freedom thing, my wife and I had the conversation. Like, I mow my own lawn. I know a lot of people in this industry.
God.
Yeah, I do.
You mow your own lawn?
I do mow my own lawn, and I hate it.
You really don't know how to evaluate your own time.
Seriously, like this is another thing. Like, I came to the realization
we need to discuss.
This is it's only an hour a week, but I don't like doing it. I don't want to do it. And now, my wife doesn't like cleaning the house, so now we're going to hire someone to come in and clean the house.
And to geek out here real quick, the way we look at math and the way I hope people at home listening start to look at decisions and get into this scary gingerbread brain of mine and the way we look at it. It's not that there's the money involved. Okay, so let's real quick, $50 to do your lawn, a cleaner comes in, it's usually $135 once or twice a month, whatever, $300 to $400. It's what your hour is worth that you're trading. If you're taking that time and you're getting, even if it's 1 to 2 deals a year that you're taking away, what is your ROI in your time?
Yeah.
And that's how I wish more people really understood and conceptualized that, because ultimately, I got buddies I give a hard time to. If they truly enjoy mowing the lawn, hey, knock yourself out. Everyone has their own vices, their own hobbies.
I don't, and I did it anyway.
Well,
I hate it.
And that's a problem. When you're looking at it and evaluating your time and putting a dollar behind it, we tend to value ourselves too little, which I find fascinating. There's all these studies out there. For example, I was talking to a buddy of mine who was thinking about transitioning to a consultant from working the W-2. And I told him he's underpaid by 30%. And he goes, what? You're crazy. I go, no. There's all sorts of studies, everything that show it, that if you're not renegotiating your salary every 6 or 12 months, within a 5-year cycle, you end up underpaid by 30% in your field on average. Yeah. And no one knows how to think of it. They don't value themselves. We'll put a value on, it's like I tell people that they'll go and they'll drive across town to save 10 cents a gallon on gas. But you won't value the hour you waste a week going to get it. That is so insane to me. I can't even wrap my brain around that. Yeah. I want to do with my time what I want to do, whether that's work on the business, whether that's travel, whether that's, friends, family, whatever we want to do. Yeah. So stepping back to your equation about mowing the lawn, your time is served so much better. You've produced that with the results as an investor. Your time is much more valuable than those little remedial tasks. It's a hard mental shift to make, but once you make it, you can't unsee it, and I guarantee you'll be in a much better place.
I very much agree with that, because for the longest time, like, I've heard people talk about this in like our community, and I've always been like, well, I can do it in 20 minutes. Like, it's not worth my while.
Well, it's 20 minutes compact.
7 hours, apparently 7 hours. But I mean, just like things like that, like the value of your time. Like, I've heard about it, I've read about it, I've seen it on blogs, I've seen it on podcasts, heard it on podcasts, videos, etc. But it came to that realization that, like, my time is more important, and going back to my why. And a big part of this, I'm not going to lie, is my son is going on, he's going to have summer vacation soon. So, like, I literally have baseball. Like, he wants to go hit baseball. Like, he loves baseball. I'm going to leave it at that. Yeah. He needs some practice.
Oh boy.
He's great at hockey. Awesome hockey player. He's a decent baseball player, but he could be a lot better. And he loves it, so he wants to work on it. And I'm like, all right.
It's also
like,
8.
Well, he loves it. He's 9 now. His birthday was last week. Last Wednesday, and I didn't call him out on the podcast, so that's awkward. Yeah. But he wants to go, like, practice, and, like, I'm his authority figure, and I was decent at baseball in high school, so I'm like, oh, okay, we'll go hit balls, like, go to the batting cages and stuff like that. Like, I don't want to have to, like, cancel those plans throughout the summer. Like, last summer we spent it at the beach, like 1, 2, 3, 5 days a week, whatever. And I don't want to be interrupted now that I have another property that I have to manage. So I want to be able to spend that time with my wife and son, that quality family time before he's a teenager and hates me.
Fair enough. That's great. I mean, I would argue come up with systems and solve the problems, but he wants to hire a management company.
Yeah,
so that's where we're at. Which, speaking of debates and going on, we're going to move to the Addicted to Problem Solving segment. And this is the listener question segment, which we got to say, big shout out. I think we can get on the screen there. You see Jax. You also see these listener questions. This is a shout out to Alex Crocker. The first listener question, rocking his Bet on Yourself swag, which links are into the show. In the show notes, there'll be links to all the shops. I believe, Chrissy, everything will be down there.
Sure will.
And, like I said, come on Facebook, come on Instagram. We're really trying to build this up. And if you want a chance to win some swag, if your question gets asked, you're going to get some swag, which ties into what question do we have this week? Who's it coming from?
So it was Rusty, our in-studio guest last week.
Yep.
Felt that he needed some swag because he was in studio.
And you just gave it to him?
No, absolutely not. Got to make him work for it.
I like it.
So he submitted a question through Instagram, and his question is, if you anticipate buying property this year, do you see prices settling down as supply and demand balance, or how would you counteract the high market?
So that's a very interesting question. I think when you look across the national landscape right now, not only is supply and demand out of whack, it really ties, in my opinion, and we'll get Jack's thoughts, the interest rates are driving a lot of this. When debt is cheap, coupled with a lack of, America just has a housing shortage. It's simple as that.
It's a nationwide housing shortage.
Which then ties into the zoning behind it.
That's why I love this market to begin with. That's why I'm in this segment.
When you have that going, I don't see it slowing down. I can see it flatlining, which I personally, I think we're at the top right now. I don't think things are going higher. But this, everyone keeps saying, the market's going to crash. Well, if you want to do a fun exercise, go back and Google, is the housing market going to crash? Start at 2012 and just change the year every year to 2021. And these predictions have been coming every year. No one has a crystal ball. If someone tells you they have a crystal ball, they're a liar, because then they should be playing the Powerball and not investing in real estate.
Yeah, I mean, just on that note, 2008 was a complete anomaly.
Yes.
That was a cluster of bad circumstances that all compiled on themselves at one time. The lending is not like that right now.
Yep.
There's still valid lending requirements. It's a lot more difficult to get a loan than it was in 2008.
Yep.
You actually have to have an income, maybe, which is weird.
To jump in on that, to your point, though, about the supply and demand, they're talking about incentivizing first-time home buyers with some credits, which there's pros and cons to that. They're talking about giving credits, which, hey, that's great. That's awesome. It gives some assistance. Everyone should have the chance for the American dream and home ownership. However, conversely, that could make prices go higher because you're not providing more supply. You're actually just increasing demand.
Yeah.
And that ties back to, circling back to his question, and it's going to lead to it. You really need to know your model, and you really need to know how to, find your returns and get deal specific. And that means if it's going to be owner occupied, if that's going to be FHA, if that's going to be an investor property, there's all these different factors that tie in. But to answer Rusty's question, I personally right now, I'm being super disciplined. I do not think they're going higher, but I also don't think they're going lower until either there's a massive zoning overhaul in this country, which I don't see happening anytime. They need to up the interest rates. And I would watch closely, what the Fed does quarterly, what's out there, what lenders and underwriters are saying about the interest rate. But until that rate increases, I don't see it slowing down. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, the only way I think that you're going to get a decrease in prices, I think prices will increase, not at the rates they have been for the past 6 months, year, 2 years. But the only way you're going to basically counteract that is through a tremendous increase in supply. I mean, like we were alluding to or said, there's a housing shortage nationwide. That's a fact. There's no doubt about that. So the only way that you counteract that is to build new properties. The only problem with that right now is it's so expensive.
Materials
it's more expensive than
roof.
ever to build a property.
Yep.
So I do think that the prices will increase, but again, it's not going to be at the crazy rate. And then if something like what the legislation that is being discussed does happen, I think that's just going to increase demand, which is going to increase prices because of the lack of supply.
Which again, and this is the difference. I know our listener base is a variety, from those thinking about getting into the game to those who are experienced. And this goes for business, this goes for real estate, this goes for all types of investing. You really need to be plugged in because you need to be in a position, if the winds do shift, to be in a position to capitalize on opportunities that come up, which that was a lot of negative stuff. Now on the positive, finding deals in this market. There are still deals out there. I mean, you're talking about right now. How are you finding your deals right now? How are you finding your opportunities?
Well, like I mentioned earlier, unofficially offered on a property yesterday. The way I like to do it, I know you don't like agents, but I like to use agents to work for me. So I don't like having my own representation. I like to use the seller's agent. I like to have them play both sides. It's my thing, I guess.
That's a great tip. Where'd you pick that up?
Was that you?
Yeah.
Was it?
We did it whole, yeah.
Crap. So I think I've done that on like
It makes the most sense.
most of my
Why don't you
properties,
clarify
yeah,
what you
yeah,
mean by that,
yeah,
too,
yeah.
for those who are unfamiliar? Because this is actually a great insider tip to get you a competitive advantage when you're bidding in a competitive market. Why don't you explain what you mean by
I
that?
hope he's not listening to it right now. But basically, the commission is always going to be 6% or thereabouts.
Yeah,
So
4, 5,
if-
6, yeah, something like that, yep.
So basically, if the seller, if the buyer hasn't, if I have an agent, the seller has to give my agent 3%. I think is generally what it is.
Yep.
So basically, I use the seller's agent to play both sides. So then they get the 6%. That by default creates an incentive for them to make this deal go through.
So you reach out, you actually contact the agent who's listing the property and ask them to represent you in the transaction as well. So you get, that agent now controls both sides of the negotiation.
Yep.
So to give a real quick example, we'll walk through Jack's deal why this can be advantageous. I remember it very specifically. The agent is not going to tell you the price because remember, they're representing the other side. What you can do from negotiation is they'll really quickly tell you if you're in the ballpark or not. Because now their commission hangs on both sides.
Exactly.
So for example, if a property is listed around $600,000 and you think it's worth $520, by getting that agent to work both sides, hey, I'm going to go to $520, $540. They're going to tell you, don't waste time, or yeah, you're in the ballpark because here's the pain point.
Yeah.
Versus by cutting out those middlemen, and there are pros and cons. You know, bigger transactions, you definitely want your own broker, et cetera, et cetera. However, this is a little tip that you can take because if you're sitting at home, think about it. If you're trying to find a deal in this market, and you have to find a way to stand out in a very competitive market. What some people are doing right now is they're waiving inspections. They're doing all cash. A lot of people are doing those. One way to get a leg up is by getting that listing agent who's going to double their commission on that transaction. I guarantee that can get you to the front of the line.
Yeah. So if there's something very important to the seller, it might not be it's not always, it's very rarely actually the price.
Very rarely the price.
So if there's something that is more important, say you can close in 2 weeks instead of a month and a half.
Say it's going to be a
month.
family-run property.
Yeah.
You know, they don't want to sell to a landlord. They don't. There's a lot of advantages to this.
Yeah. I mean, they might be incentivized to, because you can close quickly. That's it. That's all they care about. So instead of paying whatever, instead of say it's listed, what did you say, $650, you offer $520. They'll be like, you can close in a week, 2 weeks, whatever, cash tomorrow, whatever. They're very much incentivized to do that. So they'll take the hit, not really a hit, but I'm sure they're making money on it. Otherwise, they wouldn't be selling it.
Yep.
Or unless it's forced, whatever.
Yep.
But they're incentivized by working with their agent, and they'll give you little like hints, like tidbits of what they're looking for if you just ask the right question. So just reach out to them, and you can't do that without talking to them.
Yeah,
so.
you know, define your criteria, and you know, one way we're finding deals in this market is for us as a team at Commonwealth Collective is we have a very specific model. Okay, we force appreciation. We take heavy value add, mismanaged assets, and we plug them into our system. So our criteria, we need to know the exit valuation. All right. So for example, I need to be at 70% of my exit valuation. So real simple math. Let's say I think it's going to be worth $100,000 a door, okay, when I'm done. So if I got a 10-unit property at $100,000 a door, it's going to be $1 million. My all-in number, that means acquisition, rehab of the building, and holding cost needs to be at 70 to 75% of that. So $700,000 to $750,000. So my offer, I just work backwards. These deals are very hard to find. However, I am finding them through reaching out and networking and going into the properties that no one wants to deal with the headaches. We come in and I mean, we're buying the buildings that are, you know, roach infested, mice infested, tenants are behind on rent, the units haven't been updated. We solve those problems, we solve those headaches. And then we increase the value, I refinance out to a long-term lender, and then we keep the asset. That's our model. And the ones we're finding is I try to find the ugliest duckling in the room. I want to know the property that has the biggest headaches, the biggest blemishes. That's what I go to buy. And a lot of people don't want to do that. A lot of people just want a turnkey, easy process. It's stressful, it's hard, but that's kind of how we're making it work. And knowing your model is more important than ever because right now people are overspending in my estimation. I think a lot of people's estimation. You don't want to get in trouble. You don't want to do a deal just to do a deal. Remember, you're investing. You're not speculating. The biggest thing that will set you back in this industry is loss of capital. And I preach it online all the time. I preach it in the community. You make your money on the buy. You can overcome. Jack missed an inspection. I've messed up more things than I care to count. You cannot mess up overpaying for a property. If you overpay for a property, you will always be chasing. It is the one thing you cannot compromise on. So identify what's good to spend for your model. Are you buying turnkey? Are you buying beat up that needs rehab? Whatever you're doing. And stick to your model. Stick to your numbers. Don't make an emotional decision. This is investing. Okay? You cannot lose your capital. There's going to be other deals. Might not be other capital if you lose that. And that's what you have to be mindful of. Yeah. But however, with that said, when you do find an opportunity that you identify, you need to be in a position to pull the trigger. You need to be talking to attorneys. Hey, what is it like to close a commercial loan or a residential multifamily investment loan? Have a relationship. Call Keith. Have a relationship with an insurance guy. Tell him, hey, I'm thinking about getting into real estate investing. What do I need? Because commercial insurance is a lot different than residential insurance. You do not want to go to Geico for your commercial investment properties. I promise you that. Have conversations with CPAs, with tax attorneys. What I find all the time is people don't realize, we hear all the time, I need so much money to get into real estate. People don't realize what they have within their own budget. Oh, I can tap into my retirement accounts. Oh, I can get a home equity line of credit on my primary residence. I have friends and family that will loan to me. We can do them all. And again, we're going to get into this stuff, bringing it full circle back into the community. These are the things that we're going to start talking about in the Tell Us Why community. So make sure you're getting involved. We're going to be having webinars. We're going to be having events about all this. Find us on Facebook. Find us on Instagram. Ask questions, get involved, start speculating and tie that in. And where can they find us in this community, Jack? Where are we?
Yeah, if you don't already follow us on social media, find us on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, Twitter, basically everything.
Anywhere.
Everything.
If you want to check out the podcast, come here in person, Studio 21 in Salem. Come watch. Again, we're live every Wednesday at 3 o'clock on Facebook. And we'll have all this information and more in the show notes to describe. And we'll see you guys next week. And until then, as always, bet on yourself.
Bet on yourself.
The views and opinions expressed by the hosts, guests, or callers of this program do not necessarily reflect the opinions of the Studio 21 Podcast Cafe, the United Podcast Network, its partners, or affiliates.